Today in our 2015 Scion XP, we're going to be taking a look at installing the Roadmaster MX base plate kit with removable arms, part number 1187-3A. Here's what it's going to look like once it's installed. As you can see, they're a nice black powder coated finish. Once we've removed our tow bar ends, it's virtually invisible. You just slide it into place. You install your pin and clip. It does give you an area to attach your safety chain loop. These base plates are custom fit, designed for that whatever particular vehicle you may have. And they're going to be a bolt-on design, not requiring any welding. Some do require drilling. This particular application does not. Now let's show you how to install it. Our first step on our install is going to be to remove our front fascia. We're going to start by removing this plastic filler panel right here at the top. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips. And for these clips, we're just going to take it and push down in the center. And then you can remove it. I can slide this out of the way. We're going to set that aside. Then we have a couple more clips we're going to remove. We're going to have these two here, one here, and 2 more on the other side. These you can use a screwdriver or panel tool. Just pop up the center. Then we'll have to remove, there's 10mm bolts. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we can go to the sides of our fender wells and remove a couple of screws there. Now we'll have one 10mm bolt up top. Then there's a clip right here. Go ahead and take out the 10mm bolt or screw. We can take our flat bladed screwdriver, we'll turn this to release it. And we'll take out this clip, and that's going to release it off the back. And we'll repeat this process for the other side as well. Now we're going to have 8 screws on the bottom of our fascia. They're 10mm as well. So we'll go ahead and take those out. We want to make sure we have it all loose. Now we can grip firmly, just pull out on our fascia. We'll do that on both sides. Now we're going to need to remove our plugs for our fog lights before we can take it off. Then we'll squeeze up on this little tab at the bottom. Pull back our light. Do that same thing on the other side. Then we can set our bumper cover somewhere safe until we're ready to reinstall it. Now we can remove our foam absorption pad. We're just going to pull it out. This is not going to be reinstalled. We're also going to need to remove this bumper core. Before that, we're going to take these wire clips that are on here, and we're going to pry them up out of our bumper. And we'll have one more on the other side over here. Once they're out, we're going to have 2 14mm headed bolts on top, 2 on the bottom, on either side, and we're going to remove this bumper core. That's not going to be reinstalled either, so we're going to set that aside and give it back to our customer. We want to leave one in partially so the bumper won't fall down while we're loosening the other side. Then we can remove the last one. And we'll repeat this process on the other side. Now we can remove our loose bolts that we're holding up our bumper. And we're just going to set this off to the side. Now we'll take our new base plate and we're going to set it into position where we removed our old bumper core using the original hardware. Now Roadmaster does recommend that you put Loctite on all the bolts that we're going to be installing in the vehicle, as well as your ones that go into your factory holes. So we're going to use some Loctite, red Loctite, available on our website, part number LT37420. We're going to put some on each of the bolts, and we'll thread them in. We'll repeat this process for the other side. Once we have all of our bolts with our Loctite, we're going to run down all the bolts. Now we can torque down our base plate bolts to the specifications listed in our instructions. Now we're going to have some brackets that are going to go in a frame and bolt up here, and they'll also bolt from the bottom side of our frame rail and attach at those 2 points. Now one quick tech tip, you want to go ahead and clean out your threads. You can either run the bolt in or out, or if you have a tap, just tap it out to make sure you get all the paint out of the threads. And you may encounter a little bit of the body touching here, not allowing us to slide in, so you might have to take a grinder and grind off on your vehicle if it's going to be in the way. Now on this side it's going to clear just fine. We're on the passenger side. We're going to take our 1/2-inch bolt with lock washer, put on our Loctite, and we're just going to start this one into the hole, leaving it finger tight so we can still move around our bracket. Then we can go down to the bottom side and we're going to install our 1/2-inch bolt, lock washer, and this one will have a flat washer as well. We'll put a little bit of Loctite on that as well. We're going to go up through a pre-existing hole in the frame, and we'll run down our bolt. Now we're going to tighten up the one on the top side first in order to push it back and seat it in the position, and then we can tighten up the one on the bottom. Now we'll take a 19 or a 3/4 socket, whichever you have, they'll both fit. And we'll run down the bolt in the front of our bracket. And then we can tighten up the one from the bottom side, making it snug, and we'll get ready to torque them down. Now we'll torque these 2 bolts to the specifications listed in our instructions. And we'll torque down this last bolt on the passenger side. Then we can move over to the driver's side, where it's a little bit different operation. As you can see, the gray part here is our body of our vehicle, and our bracket doesn't fit. So we're going to take a grinder and grind out this excess so our bracket will slide into place. Now once we have it ground out nice and wide so it'll slide through there, we're going to slip our bracket into place and we'll start our bolt into position. It's going to be our 1/2-inch bolt with our split lock washer and some red Loctite. And we're going to leave this nice and loose. We can go to the bottom side where we have to remove a bracket before we can put our other bolt in. We're going to take out this 12mm bolt. Carefully bend it down. And we need to install our 1/2-inch bolt, lock washer, and flat washer into this bottom hole right here. We'll put our Loctite on there as well. Now we can go to the top and we'll snug up our bolt going into the front of the frame first, followed by the one on the bottom. Now we can torque them down to the specifications listed in our instructions. Once we have this lower one torqued down, we can reinstall our bracket and bolt. As you can see, we have plenty of clearance between our metal line and our bolt. Now we can torque our last bolt into place. Now we're going to take some supplied zip ties and we're going to tie our wiring to our new base plate. Now one note, you want to make sure that you have all of your wiring behind the base plate. And if it's on the outside, you can just unplug the 3 plugs and reroute it behind. So we're just going to take one, go around our wiring, And we just want to keep it so it doesn't flap around behind the grill. And we can trim off our excess. And if you need to use a couple more, it's not going to be a big deal. Just go ahead and pick up a couple extra zip ties, because you want to make sure you don't have anything coming in contact with any moving parts. Now in your instructions, it's going to show you where you need to trim out your grill to allow your base plate to come through. But it's a good idea to hold it up and look exactly where it's going to land, so you have a better idea of where you're going to cut it. Now we've determined we need to remove these two center bars here about 2/3 of the way across. So I'm just going to take a pair of snips, and you can just slice right through it. We'll go all the way to the end. And I'll just trim this piece out. We'll do that for both sides. And we can always trim it out a little bit more once it's in place. Now we'll take our fascia. We're going to place it back on our vehicle. And we're going to see how much more we might have to trim. It looks like we'll be okay there. We're just going to have to clean it up a little bit. Now we want to make sure we plug our lights back in before we snap it back into position. Let's push them in until they snap. Now we're going to take our 4 bolts that go along the top. It's going to be the one with the shoulder. And we'll start them in the holes. We'll take our 10mm socket. We're going to tighten those down. Take our large clip, snap it back into position there. And we'll have 2 more on the end. And we take our filler panel. We'll put that into place. Now the screws we previously pushed down the center on, we're going to push them right up back through so they'll go into place. Then just snap the centers down. Now we want to tuck our fender liner back in place. And we'll take our black screw, and then our clip, we'll just slide into position and it snaps in. Now we can move on to the bottom. Now we can reinstall our clips, our screws into our clips. Now we're going to need to trim back a little bit more so we can get our pin in place. Now we can take our base plate arm, place it into position. We can slide our pin in the back side. That allows us to put our pin in place. And that's going to do it for our look at and install of the Roadmaster MX base plate kit with removable arms, part number 1187-3A on our 2015 Scion XP.